Hi guys, thank you so much for joining me today. Let's have an open discussion about home defense in Canada, specifically pertaining to legal gun owners. Can you shoot somebody with your legally obtained firearm in the event of a home invasion? Let's find out. Pretty scary to think about, right? You're sleeping in the middle of the night, somebody breaks into your home, maybe multiple people break into your home. Maybe they're armed, maybe they're not. Scary to think about, right? Especially if you have, little kids or a wife or even just as a single male. Somebody in your home in the middle of the night is scary. Physiologically, we're designed to respond, one of three ways. We're going to fight, we're going to flee, or we're going to freeze. First thing I would say, if you can, flee. Get out of the house. It's just possessions, especially if you're a single male and you're able to get out safely. Get the hell out of there. Everything's insured. Take what you want. Now, if you got two small children down the hall, and a wife beside you, you may not be able to flee, which would probably prompt you to fight and protect your family, right? Seems reasonable. What has sparked the reason for me wanting to make this video is because I've noticed in my small community, north of Toronto, there's been an increase in home invasion cases. There was one a couple of weeks back, like less than a kilometer from my home. Broad daylight, three guys broke into somebody's home, roughed up the owners pretty well and forced them for some of their stuff, right? Scary shit. So what are our rights here in Canada? We don't have the right to purchase a firearm with the sole purpose of defense. We can purchase firearms for recreational purposes or hunting. If you get your possession and acquisition, your PAL license, and you obtain your firearms and you store them legally, yes, you have the right to do that, which you can see I of course, have my possession and acquisition license. I've had it for some time. I have legally stored firearms. They're actually beyond the rule of law. They're not only stored in a very secure room, they're all trigger locked or pins or bolts pulled out of them. They're all inoperable and stored legally. Ammunition is stored in a completely different area. But do you have the right to use these firearms in the event of a home invasion? Well, here in Canada, the law is not so black and white. Under Section 34 of the Criminal Code, it says you have the right to defend yourself with reasonable or proportionate force. So let's talk about exactly that. What is reasonable and what is proportionate force if somebody breaks into your home in the middle of the night? So let's say a 14-year-old boy breaks into your home in the middle of the night that is unarmed, and you get up, you're scared, you don't know that they're 14, you don't know that they're unarmed, you are able to get to one of your legally stored firearms, get to your ammunition and make that firearm operable, and you're scared and you're going to defend yourself. So if you shoot that 14-year-old boy who's unarmed and he, God forbid, dies, in court, this is going to be a very hard thing to defend yourself against to your jury. And they would most likely say that is not reasonable or proportionate force. Now, if, two full adult males that are both armed break into your house, same scenario, and you're able to get to your firearm, make it operable, and you defend yourself, killing one, if not both of them, I think any reasonable jurors would say, okay, I think that is reasonable and proportionate force, being that somebody broke into your home in the middle of the night, armed, with, of course, ill intent. You were fearful of your safety, the safety of your family, and you acted the best you could in defending yourself. I think that most jurors, or most people, civilians here in Canada, would agree that that is completely reasonable, and there is a pretty good chance you would get acquitted of those charges. But the sad part for me is, imagine, let's play a game. Imagine you are sleeping in the middle of the night with your beautiful wife beside you and your precious little children down the hall sleeping away in their bed, and in the middle of the night you are met by two grown men in the middle of your living room. Scary stuff, right? You'd wake up, you'd be flustered, you'd be scared. What do you do? And what if they aren't armed? How do you know? You're scared. It's the middle of the night. You're groggy. You're disoriented. Your adrenaline's pumping through your body. I don't think it's reasonable to expect a non-trained person, whether that be military or police or whatever background, combat experience background, to be able to remain calm and think extremely tactically in those scenarios, to be like, okay, do I identify a firearm before meeting that force? How do I see how this plays out? Most people are not going to respond that way, and I don't think it's reasonable to expect anybody to respond that way, other than responding the best way you can in that moment with your number one priority, which is your safety, first and foremost, right? Physiologically, as human beings, we are designed to protect ourselves, and self-preservation is our number one superpower, whether that's flee or to fight or to freeze. Any three of those are going to keep you safe and keep you alive, depending on the scenario, of course. So in the event that somebody breaks into your home, it's the middle of the night, you're scared, your wife's screaming, she's crying, your children are now awake and they're aware and everybody's scared, and it's on you. This is the reality. As a man of your household, it's on your family expects you to protect them. So this is my biggest issue with the law here in Canada under Criminal Code 34, is that it's open to such interpretation, using words like reasonable and proportionate. Again, how are we to determine what is reasonable and proportionate in the event of somebody breaking into my house in the middle of the night and I'm just trying to respond the best I can with my number one priority, safety of myself and my family in mind? Now, unlike some states in America, let's use Texas as an example. If you break into somebody's house in Texas, you're probably going to get shot. Now, they are completely in their right to protect themselves, and they're protected under the Castle Doctrine as well as the Second Amendment. Somebody breaks into your home, you're threatened, you feel unsafe, you can shoot them, and you're completely protected. Here in Canada, not only are you in this very weird position where you're now having to protect yourself, which is terrifying, after the event is over, and let's assume you do, in fact, shoot and kill a couple of intruders, now you have to protect yourself from our judicial system, our legal system here in Canada, which is also terrifying. And I'll refer to an instance that happened in February, I believe, of 2023 in Milton, Ontario, which is just maybe an hour west of Toronto. I'm not sure, I think it was the middle of the night. Three people had broken into somebody's home. The homeowner was a young man, I believe he was 22. He was a legal gun owner, and he was there with his elderly mother. One of these intruders out of the three were armed. This gentleman, the homeowner, had shot out of self-defense and fear one of these individuals, one of these invaders, and killed him. That gentleman was charged with second-degree murder. Now, fast forward X amount of months later, ultimately he ended up being acquitted of the charges and they were dropped. But imagine how traumatizing that would be to be put in a position, somebody breaks into your home, you react the best you can, you're scared, your adrenaline is pumping, your number one physiological response is to protect yourself and your family, shoots and kills this guy, which he was mortified. Of course, nobody wants to kill anybody. Most people don't want to kill anybody. And to be charged with second-degree murder after that, that's just like a double whammy of self-defense and preservation. So now, ultimately, again, he was acquitted of the criminal charges. But imagine how traumatizing that would have been to learn now you were being charged with second-degree murder. You now have to defend yourself against the courts, spending tens of thousands of dollars on a lawyer, let's say, and X amount of time. I believe he was in custody for the remainder of that trial, right? That due process. So now you're like in jail for like 3 months. You're spending tens of thousands of dollars, and that is just horrifying to me. Now, in 2012, I believe they made some adjustments to Criminal Code 34 that were intended to simplify and more clearly define our self-defense laws here in Canada. But again, they really haven't. It still is a huge gray area. And now I feel for even the police, for example, responding to a scenario such as that event in Milton, their first response is, well, he killed somebody, whether it's self-defense or not. I'm just a police officer. Well, I'm going to charge you, and I'm going to let the court system deal with this and figure out if you're innocent or guilty of second-degree murder. So the police are put into a weird position. I can almost guarantee with good certainty that the responding police officers to that emergency did not want to charge the guy. But again, they kind of have to, right, in those scenarios, and I don't fault them for that. The other question is, being that our gun storage laws are quite strict here in Canada as well. Again, they have to be, a firearm over here, it's got to be deemed inoperable, whether that's through a trigger lock, a cable lock, firing pins pulled out, so forth, and ammunition stored essentially in a separate room, for lack of better words, right? For this particular demonstration, this is what we'll say. You have your gun in one room, inoperable, might take you, 5 to 10 seconds to get that thing ready to rock, but now your ammunition stored somewhere else. Meanwhile, you have 3 armed guys in your living room that are slowly making their way up to your bedroom, where you and your wife are, kids down the hall. And I've had this thought myself. Maybe I just store one of my firearms in my bedroom. Maybe I don't have the trigger lock on it, and maybe I do have, a couple of rounds hidden in that same room where I could get up and theoretically within, a couple of seconds be more effective in loading and getting that firearm ready for business, right? Then you run the risk of, let's say that does happen, somebody breaks in, you shoot them, and now, well, okay, you may have been acting within reasonable or proportionate force in that circumstance to protect yourself, But now you may be facing other charges for not storing your firearm properly, which of course is much less than the alternative. But in any event, you still may be facing charges. So now the laws in Canada, I don't know that I agree with this broad kind of gray area circle around this home defense thing. I think laws that should be intended to protect law-abiding citizens, like the person who's sleeping and their home's being broken into by armed intruders. I think the law should immediately be favoring that scenario and not putting a average civilian in a position where he's expected to think rationally and analytically and assess the situation within a matter of seconds and make a decision that's going to ultimately change his life one way or another, right? I don't think that's reasonable to expect that of any citizen who's not trained. I just don't see how that makes any sense. So I'm confident to say what I would prefer to see here in Canada, and I really want to hear from you guys if you feel the same way that I do. And again, this is just specifically pertaining to home invasion cases with legal gun owners. Do you have the right, or should you have the right to, if somebody breaks in your home, yes, you could just black and white, clear as day, you can shoot them because you were scared, you felt fearful of your life or the safety of your family. I think that to me makes a lot more sense rather than putting people in an afterthought position of now having to defend themselves again after already have gone through something so traumatic. I couldn't imagine being put in that position. But I can tell you wholeheartedly that I believe everything I know of myself and how I respond to situations, that if somebody's breaking into my home in the middle of the night and I'm woken up that way and my wife is scared and I'm scared, there's not a doubt in my mind that my first goal is not to get to a firearm, get that little sucker red hot, ready to rock, and stronghold my position upstairs. Again, I'm not going to go down. I'm not going to go try to confront anybody that's in my home. I don't think that's safe, and I don't think that would be considered reasonable in my opinion as well with the current laws. So I think I would be strongholding myself, and I would very vocally be clear to these intruders. If you steal whatever you want, if you take one step coming up my landing, that's it. Open fire. Anyways, I hope that something like that never happens. It's one of my worst fears, I think, is being put in a position like that. Again, especially in Canada, I'm more fearful of the law, I think, more than even the intruder. If this was Texas and I knew with 100% confidence that my judicial system is here to protect me as a law-abiding citizen, I wouldn't even probably think about this shit. If you broke into my house, it's it. You're done. You're shot. It's it. I'm safe. So it is scary and unsettling in a lot of ways to have to think about what could happen after, and God forbid something like that does happen in your own household. So I really want to know what you guys have to say about this. And again, I continually think about that gentleman from Milton that had to go through that at 22 years old. Thank God he was acquitted, but still, what a traumatic experience he would have went through. And again, tens of thousands of dollars I'm sure he had to spend on legal counsel, which is just awful to think about. What kind of laws do you want to see here in Canada in regards to home defense? Now, another thing that is kind of shitty as well with our current Liberal government that is clearly on its way out is they've just recently banned an additional 325 or some odd firearms. A lot of these are now prohibited. I can't even take this one, for example. It's close by. This thing can only stay here. I can't take this out. I can't sell it. I can't transport it. I can't use it because it's currently prohibited. Meanwhile, a couple of months ago, it was a non-restricted long arm. So it seems like, criminals are obviously getting guns into the country with ease. That I can wholeheartedly say. When I was a younger, rambunctious little fella, I can tell you from firsthand experience that getting a firearm sometimes was easier than finding illegal weed at the time. Weed wasn't legal, and you can grab weed anywhere. And just as well, I could get a gun anywhere. Within a couple of phone calls and a day or so away, I could get whatever the hell I wanted. And I'm sure it's even more prevalent now with today's youth in society and just how the laws are and how criminals have kind of maneuvered over the last decade or so. So, you think criminals are armed, man, home invasion cases are up, and yet the government's kind of de-arming us legal, responsible gun owners. So that's a little unsettling as well, and I always say you are your number one first responder. You're always going to be your own first responder. It's nice to have police and emergency services there, but they are not responsible for your safety. You are responsible for your safety, and it is so sad to think that you doing your best, responding as a first responder in an event like that, that you would be put in a position where you actually have to think about, shit, if I shoot these guys that are in my house, I'm scared. What do I do? What do I do? Am I going to go to jail if I shoot this guy? And you panic and you pause too long. Next thing you know, you get shot and you're killed. And so that's such a scary thing to think about. And I really want to know what you guys think. So please do tell me, do you think, black and white, if somebody breaks into your house, never mind if they're 14, we don't know if they're 14, we don't know if they're armed. If somebody breaks into your house in the middle of the night and you are scared, you are fearful, and you feel threatened, should you be able to shoot them with your legally obtained firearm here in Canada? Let me know. I appreciate you guys watching this video. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button for me. I'd really appreciate that. And we'll catch you on the next one.